వాళ్ళు కూడా వారు అదే మన్నాయి పాపం ఇంట్లో అన్ని పెట్టి ఉంచుకోవాలి. చేస్తున్నాను సార్, ఒక్క నిమిషం ఇవన్నీ తీసేస్తున్నాను. అదే సార్ అందుకోసం. రెడీ సార్. సరే అడ్మిట్ చేస్తున్నాను. కొట్టలేదు ఇంకా, అందరినీ కొట్టేస్తున్నాను అడ్మిట్.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to start this online classes today onwards. And I want to request you, please maintain silence while going on these classes. So now I would like to tell what is the class today, the scalp. The topic is scalp. Next. See, why should we learn this scalp? Because clinically it is important. Though it is a soft tissue, but because of these injuries regarding this skull or the head injuries, so we should know what are the different clinical aspects regarding to this scalp. So what is this scalp? The scalp is a soft tissue which is covering the hard tissue. So what is this hard tissue? Here you can see this is the skull and the superior aspect of the skull, which is also known as vault of the skull. So vault of the skull means it's nothing but a cap. So this cap is formed by the 4 bones. Here you can see what is this vault of the scalp. So this vault of the scalp extends from this anteriorly. This is supraorbital margins. Is it visible? So supraorbital margin, and in between the median structure is the nasion. This is exactly root of the nose. Video. So vault of the scalp means it extends from the supraorbital margins in front, and behind you can see here a bony projection, that is external occipital protuberance, and either side we can see a demarcated line. So what is this? Superior nuchal line. So posteriorly the vault of the skull extends up to this extent, so external occipital protuberance, and either side superior nuchal line. And if you see on the 8 sides of the skull, this vault extends up to the line demarcated here on the parietal bone. So what is this line? The superior temporal line. So now I want to repeat what are the boundaries for the vault of the skull. In front, supraorbital margin, and in the midline, nasion. Behind, external occipital protuberance, and either side superior nuchal lines, and laterally this is the superior temporal line. So this is the extent of the vault. So now what is this scalp? So the scalp is a soft tissue. Now you see the soft tissue present over this skull cap. The skull cap is also known as calvaria. So what is the extent of calvaria? In front, supraorbital margin, behind external occipital protuberance and superior nuchal lines, and the sides the superior temporal line. So over this area we can see a soft tissue. It is nothing but scalp. Now what is this scalp? Next slide. Though we are telling the scalp is a soft tissue, but it is made up of 5 layers. See here, scalp, actually the word scalp is a mnemonic. So here we can see, here the SC stands for the skin, whereas CE stands for the, just beneath the skin, what is the tissue? Cutaneous tissue. So C stands for cutaneous tissue. Then AE stands for the epicranial aponeurosis. Then LE stands for the loose areolar tissue, and P stands for pericranium. Now we'll discuss about the individual layers. Now you see skin. As your knowledge, actually the palms and soles, these are the only areas covered by the thick skin, and rest of the skin is thin skin, as you know with the histology knowledge, right? So here, what is thin skin? Always the thin skin means it's a hairy skin. But here, what is the speciality in this scalp area? It is made up of more number of hairs, right? So the glands are associated with the hairs, means you know the sebaceous glands. But here, along with the sebaceous gland, the other important gland also present. This is a modified gland, and very important, what is that? Apocrine type of sweat glands. So because of these two glands, the hair on the scalp is well maintained, right? And the other disadvantage, because of this more and more sebaceous glands, the scalp is one of the important site for the sebaceous cyst. Means that sebaceous duct, if it is obstructed, so what happened? It leads to accumulate and converted into a sebaceous cyst. Then other clinical importance about this skin. See the dandruff. As you know, this is a normal problem on the scalp. So what is this dandruff actually? It is caused by the excessive shedding of the dead skin cells. As you know, the most superficial cells of the skin will shed off every day. So this is the excessive shedding of the dead skin cells from the scalp, and it leads to a dandruff. Then, and one more important clinical aspect here, cradle cap. So this is usually seen in the children. Here you can see the picture in the PPT. See, the cradle cap may be occurred, and it is otherwise called the sebaceous dermatitis. See here, it is maybe occurred as a excessive oil production. So what is this? Oil is produced by the skin because of the sebaceous glands, and it leads to a white or yellow scales on baby's scalp. So usually it will be clears up on its own within few months by using a mild shampoo. Next, the second layer is a connective tissue. So what is the specialty of this connective tissue in this scalp? So usually beneath the skin, we can expect the loose areolar tissue. But here, the connective tissue just beneath the skin of the scalp is a dense connective tissue. So what is the meaning of dense? The fibers are densely arranged. There is no any potential space because the collagen fibers and other fibers, they are arranged very densely. So this is a dense connective tissue. This is the second layer of the scalp. So now coming to the other details of this tissue. See here, whatever great vessels and nerves, lymphatics supplying the scalp present in this layer. So the neurovascular plane of the scalp is nothing but the second layer, right? So this is the second layer. Now we'll see what are these blood vessels present in this layer. These vessels are, we can, for easy purpose, we can divide into in front of ear and behind the ear. Altogether, 5 arteries are supplying the scalp. And these main branches are coming from the external carotid artery, and a few, only 2 branches which are supplying mostly on the forehead. So they are derived from the internal carotid artery. So what is the arterial supply to derived to the scalp? From both external carotid and internal carotid. So now you see what are these branches. You can see in front of the ear, supratrochlear artery, and the second branch is supraorbital artery. The third is superficial temporal artery, and behind the ear, posterior auricular artery and occipital artery. So here, out of these 5, the supratrochlear artery and supraorbital artery, these are the indirect branches of the internal carotid artery, because these branches takes origin from the ophthalmic artery in the orbit. So ophthalmic artery is in turn is a branch of internal carotid artery. So these branches appears on the forehead and they are supplying the most of the forehead and extends on to the scalp as far as vertex. So what is the word vertex here? This is the highest part of the skull. That is nothing but vertex. So as far as vertex is supplied by the supraorbital and supratrochlear is confined to the forehead region. And superficial temporal artery is a branch. In the PPT you can see superficial temporal artery is one of the terminal branch of external carotid artery, supplies the most of the scalp in front of the ear. Then behind the ear you can see the posterior auricular artery and occipital artery. These are the branches of external carotid artery supplying the posterior aspect of the scalp. Then venous drainage. So what are these veins? The veins exactly corresponds with the arteries, but they drain differently. So what are these veins? As usual, we see the arteries are supraorbital, supratrochlear. So the veins also supratrochlear vein, supraorbital vein, superficial temporal vein in front of ear, whereas behind the ear posterior auricular vein and occipital vein. Now you see how they will drain. So these supratrochlear vein and supraorbital vein join to form a single vein at the medial angle of the eye, where it forms the angular vein. The angular vein crosses the face, then continues as the facial vein. And this facial vein joins with the other vein. I will discuss. Now you see, behind the ear, two veins are there. What are these two veins? The posterior auricular vein. The posterior auricular vein and occipital vein. It drains into the posterior auricular vein drains into the external jugular. So how the external jugular vein is formed? Already it is completed in the posterior triangle. Now I want to repeat. So what is the formation of external jugular vein? See, in front of ear, superficial temporal vein and the maxillary vein. Both are joints to form retromandibular vein just behind the neck of the mandible. And this retromandibular vein within the parotid gland, it divides into anterior division and posterior division. You can see in the PPT. So, anterior division and posterior division. So, here the anterior division of the retromandibular vein joins with the facial vein where it forms the common facial vein, drains into internal jugular vein. Whereas posterior division of the retromandibular vein and posterior auricular vein joins to form external jugular vein, which drains into the subclavian vein, as you know, in the posterior triangle of the neck. Now coming to the lymphatic drainage. How the scalp is drained? Lymphatics. We just in front of auricle. So anterior part of the scalp, all the lymphatics are drained into pre-auricular lymph nodes, which are present in the parotid gland, substance of the parotid. So superficial parotid nodes. And whereas posterior part of the scalp is drained into the mastoid group of the nodes, means posterior auricular lymph nodes. It includes both mastoid group of lymph nodes and occipital lymph nodes. Just to see the PPT. Then what are the important nerves supplying the scalp? See here, the scalp is supplied by the both sensory, motor and autonomic nerves. So autonomics are supplying the blood vessels present in the scalp, wall of the blood vessels. Then glands, whatever present in the skin, whatever supplied by the sympathetics. Then what are the sensory nerves? So the sensory supply of the scalp is derived from trigeminal nerve and cervical plexus. So what are these nerves? In front of the ear, you can divide these branches for easy remembrance. You see, in front of ear, 5 branches. Supratrochlear nerve, supraorbital nerve, zygomaticotemporal nerve, auriculotemporal nerve, and temporal branch of facial nerve. So out of these 5 branches, just you see 5th branch, the temporal branch, it is a motor nerve. So what indicates a motor nerve is supplying the scalp means some muscle is there. So I want to discuss later that what is that muscle present. Now behind the ear, the 6th one, greater auricular nerve. Then just till behind that, lesser occipital nerve. Just all of you see the diagram, lesser occipital nerve, greater occipital nerve, 3rd occipital nerve, and the posterior auricular branch of facial nerve. Again, the 10th branch is the motor branch where it is supplying the muscle present in the scalp. So these are the superficial, means The cutaneous nerves are supplying the scalp. So supratrochlear and supraorbital, these are the branches from the ophthalmic division of the trigeminal nerve. Whereas zygomatic-temporal nerve is a branch coming from the maxillary division of the trigeminal nerve. And auriculotemporal is a branch coming from the mandibular division of the trigeminal. So all the three divisions, they are supplying the scalp. Then greater auricular nerve is a branch coming from the cervical plexus. The lesser occipital, it is another branch from the cervical plexus. Already you have seen in the dissection of the posterior triangle. Then greater occipital nerve, third occipital nerve. These are the branches from the dorsal rami of the cervical nerves. So you have to remember all these 10 branches which are supplying the scalp. So as I told initially, the dense connective tissue, it is consisting of all the blood vessels and nerves of the scalp. So this is a vascular plane for the scalp, you have to know. And all these blood vessels present in this layer, they are just adherent to the connective tissue, because the connective tissue is a dense connective tissue. Means collagen fibers all are arranged densely, right? So any blow on the skull, if damage of these blood vessels, means in a closed wound or open wound, what happened? They bleed. So in case of open wound, what happened? These blood vessels, they are unable to retract. Right? Because just to imagine a vessel present in this layer, if we cut across the, what happened? The wall is vessel is cut in between. So what happened? These blood vessel is unable to retract as it is connected to the densely arranged fibers. So what happened? These blood vessels are bleed profusely. So you can't restrict the bleeding. So what we have to do, we should compress the vessel against the underlying bone. So thereby you can restrict the bleeding, right? So in a closed wound, what happened? If these vessels are torn, what happened? The blood is accumulated and present in this just beneath the skin and forms a little swelling. You can see in this diagram. Here you see, this is a small swelling. Why it is small swelling? It is a just localized swelling. Why? Because the subcutaneous tissue is divided into loculi, so many spaces. So any blood vessel is damaged, what happened? It is forming a swelling within that restricted area. So it forms a very little localized swelling, but it is very painful. Why? Because of the unyielding connective tissue. Because it is restricted within that connective tissue, so it is very painful. But sorry for the disturbance. So in subcutaneous tissue, any localized swelling, it should be a localized, means little swelling, but with a very painful. But there is a good healing because of the rich blood supply. Girish, next slide. Now coming to the third layer. See, the third layer is known as aponeurosis. So aponeurosis, as you know, aponeurosis is a flat tendon. So flat tendon is there means that what indicates there must be a muscle. So the muscle present in the scalp is known as epicranius muscle. So what is that epicranial muscle? Usually two muscles are there, occipitofrontalis and temporoparaetalis. You can see in the PPT. So what are these two muscles? Occipitofrontalis and temporoparaetalis. But most temporoparaetalis is most variable, but usually you can see the occipitofrontalis. So the insertion of this muscle is nothing but a flat aponeurosis, which is also known as Galea aponeurotica, otherwise called epicranial aponeurosis. Let us see what is this occipitofrontalis. See what is the origin of this muscle. The occipitofrontalis has two bellies, frontal belly and occipital belly. The frontal bellies you can see in the PPT. Please you see the third diagram. The frontal belly takes, it has no bony origin. Keep it in your mind. The frontal belly has no bony origin. So it takes origin from the just dermis of the skin over the eyebrows, right? Then after taking origin, it slowly extends back upwards and backwards and inserted with the tendon. Whereas the first diagram you see the occipital bellies. So occipital bellies takes origin from the superior nuchal lines and which are separated by the epicranial aponeurosis. Just you see from two bellies, posteriorly occipital bellies and anteriorly frontal bellies. Both are joined by means of epicranial aponeurosis. So what is the function, nerve supply of this muscle? I told you at the time of nerve supply, the two nerves which are motor, rest are sensory. So what are those two nerves? One is temporal branch supplying the frontal belly. The second branch, which is posterior auricular branch supplying the occipital belly. So this is a motor supply for the occipitofrontalis. And what are these branches? Branches coming from the seventh cranial nerve. What is that? Facial nerve. So facial nerve is a nerve of the second branchial arch. So these muscles are derived from the second branchial arch. So that's why they are supplied by the seventh cranial nerve, that is facial nerve. Then what is the action? What is the use of this muscle? So this scalp is moving forward and backward by means of alternate contraction of this occipitofrontalis muscle. Then as you are questioning or surprising, what is the expression on the forehead? You can see the transverse wrinkles appears on your forehead. So by the contraction of the frontalis, you can raise your eyebrows. So eyebrows are raised by the frontalis of the occipitofrontalis. Then second muscle I told you, temporoparaetalis. It is very variable, very thin muscle, but it is present between the Galea aponeurotica below ear. Means it is attached to the root of the auricle. So what is the origin of this muscle? Usually the origin is epicranial aponeurosis. So it raises the ear. And it is also supplied by the temporal branch of the facial nerve. So this is the epicranial aponeurosis, that is the third layer. So the first three layers, they act as a single unit. Why? Because from the dermis of the skin to this aponeurosis, the fibrous bands are extending as a ligaments, nothing but skin ligament. So what happened? The first, that is skin, the second cutaneous tissue, the third layer is epicranial aponeurosis. They act as a single unit. So if you try to move your scalp, it can be moving, right? So these three layers are move as a single unit because of the attachment of this fibrous tissue. So that is the third layer. Then coming to the scalp wounds. See, because of the strength of this aponeurosis, superficial scalp wounds do not gap. You can see a small injury on the scalp, it doesn't give any gap. But if this epicranial aponeurosis is cut horizontally, means you should remember, if it is cut transversely, what happened? In case of scalp wounds, there is a lot of gap. So we have to close this. You can see the picture in the PPT. You have to close this gap by means of a deep suturing. Next, coming to the very important layer, that is the fourth layer. So fourth layer is the loose areolar tissue. So here, what is loose areolar tissue? As you know, the areolar tissue is loosely, means the fibers and everything is loose and it has some potential space. So this space, as it lies just beneath the aponeurosis, which is also known as subaponeurotic space or subgaleal space. And this first three layers, they can move freely because of this layer. Because what is this layer? Loose areolar tissue. Then this layer is otherwise called dangerous layer of the scalp. We have to know this is a 2 marks question. So what is this dangerous layer of the scalp? So because of the important content, though it is a avascular plane, but it contains some important veins. So what are these veins called? Emissary veins. So what is this emissary vein? Emissary means it is piercing something. So what is this piercing here? The skull bones are pierced by some veins, and these veins are particularly to maintain the intracranial venous pressure. So how they will maintain this pressure? Because of the communication between the veins outside the cranium and the veins inside the cranium. The veins inside the cranium is in the form of dural venous sinuses. You will know the details about these sinuses later classes. Now, so what is this vein? Emissary vein. It is present in the fourth layer and they are connecting the extracranial veins. Whatever veins present in the scalp, they are communicating with the dural venous sinus which are present inside the cranium. So, because of this communication, these veins are maintain the intracranial venous pressure. So, this is the advantage. But this is at the same time, disadvantage also there. So, what is that? Certain emissary veins traverse this layer. So, what happened? If any pus is accumulated in this fourth layer, loose areolar tissue, it is very easily spread into the dural venous sinuses. So, there is a chance of communication of the or spread of the infection from the scalp into the intracranial venous sinuses. That's why this layer is also known as dangerous layer of the scalp. Then this layer also called as safety valve hematoma. Why I want to discuss little later. Now the fifth layer is the pericranium. Fifth layer is the pericranium. So pericranium is nothing but periosteum of the skull. See, as you know, the skull bones are flat bones. So flat bones means inner surface and outer surface. So the outer surface and inner surface both are covered by periosteum. So the outer surface of the skull is covered by periosteum, which is known as pericranium. Whereas this pericranium, see, all of you see the diagram. The pericranium is continuous between the two bones. Here you see, this is the green layer. So that is the periosteum covering the outer aspect. And between the two bones, here these are the two parietal bones in between. So most of these scalp bones are interconnected by means of a joint. What is that? Sutural joint. So at this joint, what happened? This pericranium is continuous as a sutural ligament and further continuous as the endocranium. So here, what is the endocranium is nothing but the periosteum covering the inner aspect of the skull bones. Got it? The outer aspect is covered by pericranium. Inner aspect is covered by endocranium. So what is this? Actually, is a continuity between pericranium and endocranium at the level of the sutures. So this is nothing but called sutural ligament. So this pericranium or periosteum loosely covered the entire aspect, but it is very adherent at the level of sutures. And let's see if at the sutures pericranium. So therefore, if there is any fluid collection beneath this pericranium forming it will take the shape of the related bones because it is not crossing the sutures. So it is restricted to within the limitations of the bone. For example, parietal bone. So in the shape of the parietal bone, we can see any fluid accumulation or hematoma just beneath the pericranium, which is known as cephalohematoma. This is very, very important. You have to know. Some important clinical aspects I want to discuss. So after a difficult delivery in case of neonates, so these are the 3 points where I want to explain. So these three conditions are because of mostly because of the after difficult delivery. Why? Because in difficult deliveries, tools like vacuum or forceps they are using. So by the using of these tools, we can expect the three clinical importance. The first one is a caput succedaneum. So what is this caput succedaneum? While they are using the vacuum, what happened? They are compressing the skull. So during this compression, what happened? Due to intervention of venous return, the fluid means edematous swelling we can see immediately beneath the skin. So if there is any accumulation or a swelling on the skull, it lies beneath the skin, which is known as caput succedaneum. And how can you differentiate this caput succedaneum with the rest of the clinical importance? See, if you compress or press that caput succedaneum, it will be appear as a pit. So there is a pitting on this compression, swelling. So you can easily differentiate this caput succedaneum. So what is this edematous swelling around the skull? So the location for this accumulation is just beneath the skin. So that is the caput succedaneum. Then what is the subaponeurotic or subgaleal hemorrhage? So what happened in this case? See, what is subaponeurotic or subgaleal hemorrhage? It is defined as a bleeding beneath the galea aponeurosis. So what is that area for this accumulation? That is a fourth layer, right? So fourth layer is a loose areolar tissue. That's why here it provides a potential space for the accumulation of this layer. So what is the cause of this subaponeurotic hemorrhage? You see, here in case of the trauma or a fracture of the skull, what happened? These bones are fractured. Then the accumulation, the blood means the intracranial hematoma may be extends. In the next diagram, you can here you see here in this diagram, you can see the fracture of the bone. So what happened? The hematoma extends into the through this fracture line into this subgaleal space, means subaponeurotic space. Then this accumulation, if these meningeal layers are damaged, what happened? The CSF also extends through this fracture line and appears in the loose areolar tissue. Means in case of meninges, means CSF is accumulated. So what is that condition called? Cephalohydrocele, or hemorrhage occurs beneath this layer, so which is known as a subgaleal hematoma. So this subgaleal hematoma is useful for us in what way? You see, in case of these fractures, intracranial hematoma leads into extracranial hematoma. So in this layer, what happened? Until the entire fourth layer is filled with blood, there is no compression on the brain. So it acts as a safety valve. So that's why the hematoma in the loose areolar tissue, means fourth layer, it is also known as safety valve hematoma. And this hematoma present in the subgaleal tissue, it may gradually extend on to the eyelids. You see here, a simple blow on the skull. So collection of the blood in subaponeurotic space, it is generalized swelling because it extends the entire fourth layer. And moreover, blood slowly gravitates into the eyelids. Why? Because in the anterior aspect, frontalis has no bony origin, as I told previously. So what is that? Frontalis has a skin origin, means dermis of the eyebrow gives origin. So what happens? Blood slowly gravitates into the eyelids. So we can see the accumulation of this hematoma around the eyelid. So what is this phenomena? It is known as black eye phenomena. Black eye phenomena. Then the third important aspect, cephalohematoma. So what is this cephalohematoma? It is a subperiosteal collection of the blood that does not cross the suture lines. Why it is not crossing the suture lines? As I told, the pericranium is continuous at the sutures of the bones with the endocranium. So here the third diagram, just to see all of you, what is the third diagram? Lower diagram. The hematoma occupied within the blue color line. So what is this? This is bordered means limited by the shape of the bone. So cephalohematoma always corresponds with the shape of the that adjacent bone beneath the periosteum. So this is in which, so for this you have to know what are the layers present in the scalp. So which layer is responsible for what, and you can clinically diagnose. So what is subaponeurotic hemorrhage or caput succedaneum or cephalohematoma. So the knowledge of the scalp is very, very important. And here I have given 3 pictures. You see, this is the first picture, caput succedaneum. And the second picture you see, it is a confined. It is not a generalized swelling. So it gives a shape of that particular bone. So what is this condition called? Cephalohematoma. Whereas the subgaleal hemorrhage, it is a generalized swelling. So it occupies the entire area of the subgaleal space. Subgaleal means beneath the epicranial aponeurosis. And thank you. So all these layers, so 5 layers are important, and as point of examination, scalp is a essay question. So you have to know what are the different layers and in what way they are extending. So what is the extent of the scalp, soft tissue? Then what are the different layers? Then very important, what is the nerve supply and blood supply? You see, as concerned with blood supply, the scalp of the skin is very special because the rich blood supply of the skin, it means a scalp. If you compare with any part of the body, the rich blood supply you can expect in the scalp. Then thank you. Stop share, Anna.